Throughout the history of human empires, none has ever matched the United States. Though separated from other continents by thousands of miles, it still manages to exert such deep global influence. The United States has a land area of 9.37 million square kilometers, making it the fourth largest country in the world. So how did it rise to become the world's leading economic and military power? I will produce a video series to explain the history of America's development. This video is the first episode. Steer at present. The most widely accepted theory of early settlement suggests that around 25,000 years ago, the first humans arrived in the Americas via the Bering Land Bridge. These early inhabitants are known as Paleo-Indians. They gradually spread throughout North America. Around 11,500 BCE, one of the earliest cultures emerged within the territory of what is now the United States. The Clovis culture was characterized by the distinctive production of Clovis spear points. By around 10,000 BCE, Native Americans had spread across most parts of North America, dividing into hundreds of tribes and groups with different cultures. Initially, these indigenous peoples survived by hunting large animals, such as mammoths and mastodons. However, as these large animals gradually went extinct, the American bison became their main source of food. And around 8,900 BCE, the Folsom culture emerged in this region. This culture may have originated from the Clovis culture and was also marked by its unique spear points, occupying vast areas of central North America. Around 6,500 BCE, the region corresponding to the present-day southwestern United States saw the development of the ancient Southwest culture. The characteristics of this culture included diverse survival strategies, the development of agriculture, and distinctive ceramic styles. Around 5,000 BCE, a group of people belonging to the Na-Dene language family set out from Asia, possibly reaching the northwestern part of North America by boat. They first settled in what is now the Queen Charlotte Islands in British Columbia. They migrated along the Pacific coast and inland, establishing seasonal villages. During the summer, they engaged in fishing, and during the winter, they gathered food. These Na-Dene groups later developed the Athabascan language family, which eventually divided into three main branches: the Northern Athabascans, the Pacific Coast Athabascans, and the Southern Athabascans, among them the Southern Athabascans. The Southern Athabascans further evolved into two language groups, the Apache and the Navajo. Today, the Navajo language is the most widely spoken language within the Na-Dene family. During the same period, other groups, such as those speaking the Swan languages, the Algonquian languages, and those following the Oshara tradition, as well as the indigenous peoples known as the Pueblo tribes, also settled in the western regions of what is now the United States. And around 4000 BCE, some tribes living in the Appalachian Mountain region developed a distinct Iroquoian language. These tribes later formed the Seneca, Cayuga, and Oneida peoples. By around 2000 BCE, the southwestern part of what is now the United States began cultivating maize. Later, beans, squash, and other crops gradually became their main agricultural products. Around 1000 BCE, a group of peoples began to settle in the central valley of the Mississippi River. Later, they migrated to the region of present-day Minnesota and divided into two main linguistic branches, Dakota and Lakota. Around 600 BCE, a new culture emerged in what is now the state of Ohio. The people of this culture were among the earliest mound builders. Around 100 BCE, a number of indigenous cultures flourished. By around the beginning of the Common Era, these cultures had absorbed characteristics from the surrounding societies and established the Hopewell exchange system. This was an early system of tool and goods trading that covered vast territories. However, by around 500 CE, this culture was gradually absorbed by another broader cultural system. From around 800 CE, the Mississippian culture began to emerge. This culture was mainly distributed in what is now the central and southern regions of the United States and was characterized by the construction of large earthen mounds. Its core city was Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, Missouri, at its peak in the 12th century. Cahokia had a population of about 20,000 people. The city was built around a massive mound, rising approximately 30 meters high. From around 900 CE, the ancestors of the Pueblo peoples began building cliff dwellings in the area where the present-day states of Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado meet. These structures were massive, comparable in scale to cities. For example, in the Chaco Canyon region of New Mexico, the village of Pueblo Bonito was inhabited between 828 and 1126 CE. Another notable site was the Cliff Palace. The Cliff Palace was built between 1190 and 1260 CE. Around 1450 CE, the powerful Iroquoian-speaking tribes, the Oneida, the Mohawk, and the Seneca formed the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois engaged in wars with many neighboring tribes. As their territory expanded, smaller tribes such as the Osage, Kaw, and Ponca were forced to migrate westward. Around 1500 CE, some of the Shoshone peoples living in the western Great Basin crossed the Rocky Mountains and settled across the vast plains. By the 16th century, some Shoshone groups living in what is now Wyoming split off and migrated southward. They later became known as the Comanche. In 1513, the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon, he became the first European to arrive and set foot on the territory of what is now the United States. Impressed by the natural scenery of the region, he named it Florida in honor of Spain's Festival of Flowers. In 1526, the Spanish made their first attempt to establish a settlement on the mainland of what is now the United States. It was called San Miguel de Gualdape. However, due to the outbreak of disease and a rebellion by the accompanying African slaves, the colony eventually failed. In 1528, a Spanish expedition led by Panfilo de Narvaez arrived near Tampa Bay on the Florida peninsula, but a violent storm struck, causing the deaths of nearly all expedition members. The colonization attempt failed once again. In 1540, Spanish explorer Francisco Vázquez de Coronado, he led the first European expedition to cross the southwestern region of the United States, reaching as far as what is now the state of Kansas. In 1559, explorer Tristan de Luna established a settlement in what is now the city of Pensacola. It was called Santa Maria de Ochuce. However, that same year, the colony was destroyed by a hurricane. In 1565, Spanish Admiral Pedro Menéndez de Avilés founded the settlement of St. Augustine. It became the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement on the territory of the continental United States. In 1567, Spanish explorer Juan Pardo built Fort San Juan in a village located in what is now the state of North Carolina. This was the first European settlement established inland within the territory of the present-day United States. But 2 years later, Anasensair saw it was destroyed. Chastisay. In 1570, the Spanish attempted to establish a Jesuit mission on the coast of what is now Virginia. However, the following year, almost all of the missionaries were killed by the local indigenous people. In 1562, the French attempted to establish a settlement called Charlesfort on the coast of what is now South Carolina. But it was abandoned the following year. In 1564, the French made another attempt to build Fort Caroline on the east coast of Florida. However, due to conflicts with the native peoples, the settlement was eventually abandoned as well. In 1604, the French established a settlement on St. Croix Island in what is now the state of Maine. This marked the birth of the colony of Acadia, which later gradually expanded into what is now the Gaspé Peninsula of Canada. In 1682, France established the Louisiana colony as an administrative region of New France. The colony covered vast areas of what is now the territory of the United States. In 1579, British Captain Francis Drake arrived on the coast of what is now California and declared the region as territory of the British Crown. However, it was never actually occupied. In 1585, the English established the Roanoke colony on Roanoke Island in present-day North Carolina. This was the first English settlement in North America, but the colony eventually failed, and its residents mysteriously disappeared. It later became known as the Lost Colony. In 1587, John White led another group of English settlers to establish a new settlement again on Roanoke Island. However, due to a shortage of supplies, the settlement was abandoned. Around the year 1590, in 1607, during the reign of King James I, the English successfully established the first stable and permanent settlement in North America, Jamestown. They named the colony Virginia in honor of Queen Elizabeth I, who was known as the Virgin Queen. In 1620, a ship called the Mayflower, carrying a group of English Protestants who were fleeing religious persecution, arrived on the coast of what is now Massachusetts. There, they founded the Plymouth Colony. After enduring a year of poor harvests and harsh winters, the colonists finally achieved a good harvest the following summer. In the autumn of 1621, at the suggestion of the colony's governor, the settlers hunted wild ducks, turkeys, and fish, and gathered corn to hold a celebration. This event became known as the origin of Thanksgiving in the United States. In 1628, British colonists established the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In 1629, the province of New Hampshire was founded, with John Mason becoming its first proprietor. In 1632, Maryland was founded as a refuge for Catholics and was established in a manner similar to the Virginia colony. The inhabitants there were primarily farmers and plantation owners. In 1636, Pastor Roger Williams opposed the colonists' mistreatment of the Native Americans, as well as the religious intolerance of the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony at that time. Together with other settlers, he founded the Connecticut Colony. The colony's early economy was mainly based on the trade of furs and tobacco. In 1691, the Plymouth Colony was merged with the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was reorganized into the state of Massachusetts. In 1712, Carolina was divided into North Carolina and South Carolina. In 1732, British General James Edward Oglethorpe founded the colony of Georgia. This colony served both as a buffer zone between British territory and Spanish Florida, and as a settlement providing opportunities for the rehabilitation of former prisoners and the poor. Georgia was the last of the 13 colonies to be established before the American Revolution. In 1621, the Dutch West India Company established the colony of New Netherland. In 1624, the company sponsored 30 families to settle on Manhattan Island. The following year, a fort called Fort Amsterdam was built on the island, and the settlement was renamed New Amsterdam. It became an extension of the colony of New Netherland, and the city grew rapidly. It quickly became an important port and a bustling commercial center. In 1638, the Swedish South Company sent an expedition led by Belgian merchant Peter Minuit. They established Fort Christina in what is now the state of Delaware. This marked the birth of the new Sweden colony. Over the next 17 years, 12 expeditions from Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Norway, Russia, Poland, Germany, and Sweden itself brought settlers to the region. They established multiple settlements, turning the colony into a multicultural region. In 1655, during the Second Northern War, the Dutch from New Netherland conquered New Sweden and renamed the territory New Jersey. In 1663, Carolina established its port city, Charleston, which became an important commercial harbor in the region. In 1664, the English conquered the Dutch colony of New Netherland and seized New Amsterdam. In this foundation, they created the colonies of New Jersey, New York, and Delaware. In 1667, the Treaty of Breda was signed, marking the end of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. According to the treaty, England agreed to cede the colony of Suriname to the Netherlands in exchange for control over New Netherland. New Amsterdam was then renamed New York in honor of James Stuart, the Duke of York, who later became King James II of England. In 1673, the French New France colony expanded its Canadian territories into the Great Lakes region, reaching as far west as Lake Michigan. In 1681, religious thinker and writer William Penn founded the colony of Pennsylvania as a refuge for those persecuted for their religious beliefs. The following year, the city of Philadelphia was established. In 1722, the Iroquois tribes enacted the Great Law of Peace, issued by the Iroquois Confederacy. This law became the Constitution of the Iroquois Confederacy. By this point, the transformation of the mainland United States from unclaimed land into a network of European colonies had been completed. In the next episode, we will move into the mid-18th century to witness how the North American colonists rose from the cry of no taxation without representation to full-scale armed resistance. Thus began the War of American Independence.